Welcome back to another episode of the Be Who You Came to Be podcast and YouTube show. I'm your host, Tara Renze, and today I have a very special guest and friend, someone who I met, almost 4 years ago when we were both in Tennessee at the Dave Ramsey headquarters. We had gotten invited in to come in for an influencer event, and for me, it was love at first sight when I met Jade Warshaw. She was so dynamic, so engaging, an incredible speaker, and had her own Dave Ramsey debt story that I'm not going to lie, took the wind out of me when I first heard it. Um, but she is just a total dynamo and is now one of the Dave Ramsey personalities. And we're just honored and excited to have her on the show today to talk about money, finance, and authenticity. Jade, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tara. And let it be known, I felt the same way when I met you. I
Oh,
did. I was like, this is who you need at these events.
well, I remember we went into the podcasting studio and I was like, this is you. I'm like, you go, I still
You
have the
did.
picture that I took of you. And it was like, and now it's crazy because you manifested all of that. And you bring so much, just you bring you're the personality is the word, right? Because you just bring this fun edge to the show. I love your sense of humor. You tell it like it is, and you can tell that Dave really, really vibes when you're on the show with him.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you have to show up 100% as yourself, especially in this sort of arena. If you don't, the only person that's going to be hurt by that is you.
100%, 100%. And I have to tell you that I have two teenage boys, and one of my sons is a junior, and he's taking some money and finance classes. And him and his buddies were over the other night, and they were asking me all about the podcast. And I was telling them that I had you on, and they're like, no way. You have Jade coming on your show? Because apparently they watched the Dave Ramsey show at the high school, and they're fans. They're like, oh my God, no way. How do you know her?
That's amazing. Hey, that's legitimate. Whoever their teacher is, like, big up to that teacher. That's great.
Well, you know what? I mean, how wonderful that they're teaching kids about this because, back in my day, I did have to balance a checkbook, which was always interesting because I've always sucked at math, so I was never really great
Uh
at
huh.
balancing my checkbook. But I had no idea about money, and I'm a banker's daughter, so you would think I would, but I had no idea about any of that, and it's really interesting. They have a lot of interest in money and finance and investing. Like my husband works on a mutual fund, and yesterday, I guess my son called him and he's like, Dad, what's going on with the market?
Ah, yeah.
So it's cool that they know about it.
That is cool. That's good that he's tracking that. Yeah, we've had some bloody days here. These past couple of days have been something. But that's when I was in high school, I knew nothing of any of that, and I think that is an issue for a lot of Americans who are adults now. We've entered into the workforce. We're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and we were never given that formal education on financial literacy or personal finance. And so as a result, we kind of just took all of our cues from culture, right? Like whatever they said on the commercials about, cash back and credit cards. And that's kind of how a lot of us kind of got our feet wet. And it just wasn't enough to really teach us what we needed in order to be successful.
Yeah. Well, and we live in a spendy world where,
Hmm.
that was the other thing growing up. Like, I didn't know what designer things were. I wasn't interested in that. And these kids have all of this in front of them now all the time. And we do as adults.
That's right.
And so I'd love for you to tell your story. So we joke that when I was in college, I bought the most expensive candy bar on the campus that day because they have, the credit, they used to set the credit card people up on campus and be
That's
like, and
right.
you can sign up. It's no interest. It's free for the first 3 months, and we'll give you some M&Ms or something
A t-shirt.
ridiculous. And so of course I signed up, and then it was like, oh, we'll use this to get a pizza. Oh, I'll use this to buy a new rug for my
Right.
dorm. And then suddenly, I got out of college and I had some debt. My husband had some debt. We actually used we took a loan out to pay all the debt off, and then we used the cash method, the Dave Ramsey cash method, to pay off our debt. And it was crazy how much money we had at the end of the week. Like when you're like, okay, I have $100 to spend,
Mhm.
you don't buy stupid shit that you don't need.
That's right. That's so true. Yeah, similar. I came out of college with student loans. My husband came out with even more student loans. We weren't married at the time, but we got married soon after. And yeah, it it's kind of frustrating because here you are, you've done everything that everybody told you should do, right? It's like, "Oh, you wanna go to college? Make sure you choose a good one, and if you can't afford it, it's okay, there's student loans for that," and so we did that, and then it's like, "Hey, you're out of college, you've done this really great thing. Shouldn't you have the vehicle that you want? Shouldn't you treat yourself a little bit?" So you go and get that car loan, and I got mine and Sam got his, that's my husband, and, we look up a year into it and it's like, "Holy crap, we got a lot of debt." And at the time, I don't think I realized just how scary it was. Now when I say the number, I'm like, "Ooh," like, I feel the shiver, but it was 460,000. Yeah, $460,000 of debt, and yeah, 280 of that student loans, and the rest, cars you can't afford and the credit cards like you talked about, Tara, and just trying to manufacture this life so quickly that really takes a couple of decades to be able to build up the right way.
Right. So let's go back to that because that had to be, it had to have affected your self worth and like your self regard and like how did I get into this mess and then how in the hell am I going to get out? I mean, that is a huge, huge number that probably seemed insurmountable.
Yeah, you're right. When you say the number out loud, it was a lot. And for Sam and I, it was a lot to tackle, mentally just as much as practically. But yeah, Sam and I, we definitely processed it in different ways. I've always just been an optimist. Like, I am a happy go lucky person. I am a person who, I don't know if it's just the way I was raised, but if in a lot of ways, it didn't affect me mentally the way you think it might. Whereas my husband, it definitely did. For him, because I guess a lot of it came from his side, he did feel a lot more of the weight. He felt a lot more guilt associated with it. And yeah, you're right. You do kind of start to take on that identity of, instead of the debt being the mistake, like I'm the mistake, like I'm the one that did this. And so that was something that we had to navigate pretty early on. And I mentioned this yesterday. I was hosting the Ramsey show with Dave, and we were talking about everything that happens when you make the choice. Okay, I made these mistakes and now I'm going to fix it. And if that looks like paying off your debt, which for Sam and I it did, it took us 7.5 years to do that. But during that time, even if it's for you, a year or 6 months, during that time, that's when you forgive yourself. Like, that is you actively, with each payment, with each step forward, you rebuilding that confidence, and you also saying to yourself, "Hey, I made a mistake. Mistakes are research, and now we're moving forward."
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you for paying that off because that is absolutely incredible. And I want you to tell the story that you told. Kind of, you did a monologue type thing when we were at Dave Ramsey when you took the stage, and you talked about though when this debt it finally hit you and took the wind out of you, and you guys were in a car. It was hot. It was Phoenix, right? Am I tracking?
Yeah, you're tracking. It was South Florida, very
Oh, so
similar.
God, that's even worse because
Yeah.
you had the humidity.
Right, right. Yeah, I'll never forget that day. It was, about a year and a half, 2 years into that journey, and we had made some headway, but just not enough. And I was just feeling the weight of it. I was feeling the stress of it. Credit card collectors were calling my line. I call them 1-800-PAY-ME, was calling me, blowing me up, talking about, "We need a payment, we need a payment," because I was barely making minimums. And so I finally, it was just call after call after call, and I remember feeling literally like I was going to implode, and, my husband was driving the car, and I just told him, like, "Pull the car over right now. Stop the car." I have literally have it. It's like that Instagram meme when he's like, "Cut the tape. I'm out. I'm finished."
I love that one. It's hilarious. Like I'm done.
I'm
I
done.
can't.
That was me in real life. We can only take so much, right? As humans, like, we hit that breaking point where something must change immediately now. And that's where I was. Something must change immediately right now. And I remember we pulled over to the side of the road, like off into this little gravel driveway. And we just sat there for a little while. And I was crying and I was upset. And I was like, we have to change. We have to go faster. We have to figure this out. Like, I had no more patience left in me. And so, in that day, that was really kind of a turning point as far as our intensity is concerned. And as far as us really looking at what are the areas we can do better? What are the things that, because we all kind of sugarcoat things in our own mind. We go, "Oh, I'm doing pretty good," or "That's all right," or "That's enough," or "That's getting me." And this was one of those times where almost doesn't count, like we really needed to just get in gear and we did.
Yeah. Did you have kids at the time?
No, no, not
You
yet.
did not have kids.
So Sam and I had made the decision pretty early on, like, we can't bring kids into this mess. And that was a personal decision. I would never put that on anybody else. I am pretty clear about the fact that if you want to have a kid, like, do your thing. But for us, there just wasn't a feasible way. I'm like, We can't afford it." And so we made up our minds. We're gonna wait, and that also will serve as a motivating factor for us to get this done because, there is a clock that's a ticking. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, who would have ever thought that from that time on the hot Florida car that you would have transformed everything and now you're working at Ramsey as someone who is a trusted advisor
mhm,
for financial decisions and how we show up. But let's talk a little bit about finances, money, and authenticity. My message is called Be Who You Came to Be.
mhm.
And what's really interesting is until I started this podcast, I never even thought about the role money or finance plays in to this notion of being who we came to be. But let's face it, so much of it is that. I mean, you could start with a college education, right? I mean, if someone wants to be who they came to be, but they can't afford to go to college or they're going to have to take out loans, that would hinder them and maybe it would alter their path. Um, housing, cars, all these things. Like, I would love to just have you talk a little bit about how does money define us and how does it shape who we are and who we came to be in our life?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think money does define us. I think that money is part of life. I consider money to be completely amoral, right? It's just a tool in life, and we can pick it up like any other tool, and it's really great if you know how to use it, right? It's like if I go into the garage and pick up, you know, a saw and I don't know how to use it properly, I can injure myself. I can hinder myself. A project that was supposed to take a day could end up taking 3 days, right? So it's important to know how to use the tool properly, and money is the exact same way. And I kind of hit on this earlier, but when you talk about it as a defining factor, and I know what you mean by that, but let's put it into a scenario. So yeah, let's say I'll use my scenario. I'm a person. I went to college and I wanted to be a musician. I thought, hey, I want to be an entertainer. I want to be a vocalist. How do I get there? I didn't even consider the money part. I'm thinking about studies, I'm thinking about skill set, I'm thinking about networking, I'm thinking about all these things, and I'm forgetting about a major tool, which is money. And so, in that way, I think that we really need to start normalizing those conversations a lot early on. What you said about your sons earlier is great. They're already thinking about this, they already know that it's a factor. A lot of us didn't and don't. And so, knowing early on, okay, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, whoever it is that you want to be, money is a tool, and whether we like to admit it or not, it is connected to every single thing. It's connected to our relationships. It's connected to our career. It is connected to, for some people, how they view themselves. It is there. And so we have to learn how to use that tool.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you grew up, but I grew up very much like we don't talk about money. Even though I worked for a bank, my family owns a community bank. But every my dad knew about everybody's money in town because he was the banker. But we never talked about money. He obviously never talked to us about anyone's money.
Hmm.
We didn't. People didn't talk about how much they make. I remember coming out of college and like getting job offers and being like, okay, well, like, is this a good salary? Like, I have no idea what people are making. And then you didn't want to ask about money. I mean, it's just this whole, it's like a faux pas where now, I mean, I know that for a fact, I mean, my boys, they ask a lot of questions about money
Hmm.
and we're very transparent with them for the most part.
Yeah, it's important to be. And not just yeah, like having those conversations so important, but I mean, if I was a kid and I asked my parents, "How much do you make?" I mean, that was like a rude question to ask. "How much do your parents make?" It would be a rude question to really dig into any of the details of like the day-to-day goings on. But I'm finding, man, it's so important because, I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I talk to them pretty detailed, I mean, for their age about money. I make it clear to them that money is something that is a limitation for a lot of folks, that there it is something that you can run out of. It's not endless. I've explained to them the idea of borrowing money and what debt is, and how if you borrow money, you have to give it back plus more. Like, all of those things are so important. Teaching them that every time you go somewhere, you don't have to buy something, teaching them about a budget. All of those things are so, so important. And even teaching them, like I said before, that money is a connector of all things, and it's not inherently good or inherently bad. It's just a tool, and it's completely amoral.
Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. I mean, I'll be very transparent in admitting that for me, I'm a very ambitious woman. I'm a hyperachiever. Achievement is big, and I went into sales, and so obviously everything in sales is measured by how much you're selling
Yeah.
is equal to how much you make. And so the better you did, the more money you made. And I have struggled in my life with not associating success with
Mhm.
salary
Yeah.
or with money, because it is easy to be like, "Oh my gosh, I made X amount when I was totally kicking ass in the corporate world." And then when I shifted to have more flexibility to stay home with my kids, I will say that the money, it impacted how I felt about my self-worth, because I
Mhm.
wasn't, quote unquote, contributing financially.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that for a lot of working women specifically, that shift of, then if you want to be at home with your kids more, which is, I mean, I that was the best decision I ever made, was to have more flexibility to be at home. But I had to really let go of, I am not measured by money.
That's so good. Yeah, I it's that whole net worth equals self-worth conversation. And I relate to a lot of what you're saying, because the truth is, yeah, I'm a very, very goal-oriented person, and I think that a lot of Americans are. And I think where things start to shift is, yeah, it's great to have a very clear goal if you're in sales, whatever it is. I remember for the longest, when my husband and I first were married, his biggest financial goal is, I just want to make $100,000. I'm like, "Okay." Right? But there's not really much depth associated with that. It's like, "Okay, and why? And what does that mean for you? What does that do for you?" Right? And as I've gotten older, I've realized that the why behind the what is really what, um, keeps me tethered to the right things, right? As opposed to just a dollar amount, or just a sales goal, or just a criteria that I'm trying to hit. But having that deeper why of what I'm really trying to create is stability for my family, right? What I'm really trying to create is an environment where my kids don't feel the stress of money and payments. What I'm really trying to create is this legacy that my daughter can look at and go, "Man, mom went out there and she knew who she was, and she understood how to juggle all of these things." Right? Like, those are the things I'm mostly connected to. And having a clear, kind of like a clear end zone in my mind, and not continuing to let that goalpost move in a way that's making me feel like, "Oh, I still haven't, I still haven't," like, if that goalpost continues to move, it's like, yeah, we're never going to be enough. But if it's just saying, "Hey, I am enough. These are just the things that I'm being blessed to be able to achieve, and it would be wonderful to be able to achieve these things." I think that's just the separator that we create.
Are you trying to reach your protein goals without the heavy, chalky, yucky, milky protein shakes? Well, guess what? I have something just for you. Meet my new favorite protein, Clear Protein Plus. This is the protein that thinks it's a lemonade. This protein gives you 20 grams of pure protein, zero sugar, and just 90 calories. I love it. It's delicious. It keeps me feeling energized, full, and there is zero bloat. And you guys, I got to tell you, this is personal. I have known Casey with My Ultimate Edge my entire life. Yes, we grew up in that small town in Kansas together. I trust her. I have used her products for years, and I have seen real results. You guys have to go check out My Ultimate Edge. It is your full body wellness solution, from gut health to hormones to weight loss to protein to energy, and even a new NAD powered sleep routine. I promise you're going to love it as much as I do. Check out the show notes for a link to the Clear Protein Plus, as well as all the other products that I love. Talk to me a little bit about this. abundance versus scarcity mindset with money, because I have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, a lot of people that follow are, people who are running their own business, in business for themselves. And one of the things that I read a lot on is people are like, if you have a more abundant mindset about money, it'll just continue to come, versus this
Mm.
scarcity mindset of like, oh my God, I'm never going to have enough. There's never going to be enough. And I would just love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think about that in two ways. Number one, habits, principles of money are principles of money, no matter who you are, no matter your socioeconomic background, no matter race, no matter what. There's certain principles that if you do these things, you will see XYZ result, right? So that could be something like, hey, if you're a person who budgets, you're a person who has a plan for their money, you will see the results of that. If you are a person who invests, like compound interest is, magical. And so you will see the results of that. If you are a person who's generous, right? We know like generous people, they receive more. It's like your hand is open, money flows in, money flows out, right? So there's certain principles of money that no matter who you are, if you enact those things, you will see the benefit. Then there's the idea of, okay, but we are individuals and we do all have a different background. And the truth is, the background shapes how we view money, how we view our relationship with money, and that could be different for everybody, right? If you grew up in a home where money was tight and you missed meals, and sometimes you came home and the electricity was out, then yeah, you probably have a harder time when someone like me says, "Hey, here's a principle with your money. You should save more or give more." For them, that could feel really hard because it's like, no, I have this money. I need to hold on to it. This is safety for me, right? Versus someone who grew up in maybe a more affluent household where they did have the things they need. Maybe they heard a little of this, so when I say it, it's not so unfamiliar, right? So the truth is, how you grew up, your background does matter. However, it doesn't have to limit you. And that's really what my message is, especially in the book Money is Not a Math Problem that I wrote last year. It's just a quick read. And it's all about how you can kind of overcome those mental barriers because we all have them. Everybody has it. Even if it's I dated a guy and, he tried to lord money over me. Like any of those experiences shape who we are, but we don't have to stay that way.
Right. What would you say to someone who has an aspiration of completely shifting up their life? They're in their midlife and they have a great job with great money. Because I hear this all the time. How could we ever leave the money? How could I ever leave the money to make a major shift and do something new?
Well, is the shift in doing something new, is it a major pay cut? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Uh, you know, I think it goes back to that old adage, well, there's two ways you could look at it. A, money doesn't equate to happiness, right? Um, I think spending your time in a way that you enjoy equates to more happiness than a financial figure. And for a lot of people, they won't know that until they test it. I mean, that's the truth. You could say, I could say that all day long, and the truth is no one's gonna feel that unless they go out and test it for
Right.
themselves, right?
Right.
That's really the truth of the matter, because the other side of that equation is money doesn't equal happiness, but money does equal a lot of things that are very important and feel like they can equate to happiness. Let's talk about that because I love what you said there. I mean, the truth is financially speaking, when you have managed your money well, no matter how much or little that you make, but when you've created a situation where you're not, in debt, so you're not kind of bound up to payments and you do have cushion and you do have savings and you do have retirement, that does create options in life, right? And options a lot of times do feel like happiness, right? It's like, oh, I have the option to choose. I have more accessibility to my time. Maybe I can have better healthcare that other folks can't afford, right? So even though money doesn't necessarily make mental and happiness in our heart, it can create levels of peace and options and stability that do make us feel happier.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, when you have a little more money, it's easier. You don't have to think about everything. I mean, I think about even sometimes going to the grocery store and how fortunate I am that I
Mhm.
don't look at the price of milk. I'm like, my boys need milk. I'm gonna go get milk. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so I do think, obviously that's not like happiness, but it's not a stress, right? And so many
It's
times
not a
we get
stress.
stressed. Money can be very stressful. And I think, I even think about my marriage, and I've been married for 24 years. And the biggest heated times that we've ever been in, a lot of times it involves something around money, right? Whether we were
That's right.
saving, whether we were going to spend something on a trip. I'm much more spendy. My husband is not as spendy. Um, you know, he, we just have, and so we've really worked, and we always have had combined bank accounts, which I think has been
Uh-huh.
really good for us because we've always been a unit. For us, that's
Mhm,
what has
mhm.
worked.
So important.
And we
Yeah.
joke, I'm like, "Oh, let me get dinner tonight," even though it's all coming from the same place.
Right, right.
But the only time it's coming to problems is like when we're buying Christmas gifts. I'm like, "Hey, you cannot look at don't look at the Amazon account or whatever it is." Like, because I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
surprise you with something. But it impacts relationships. It impacts families greatly. Um, you know, my family's been fortunate in even dealing with just a family that we after my father died, we inherited this bank, and it created a lot of tension at first of like, okay, how are we going to divide this up? What are we going to do? And we see so many families ruin their families over money,
Mm,
especially after someone passes away. And we my brothers and I, we're the only remaining family on that side of the family, we really had hard conversations of like, hey, we know this is a significant amount of money. Like, what do we want to do with it? And first off, we don't ever want this to impact our relationship because we were very
mhm,
close.
mhm.
And it's sad how many families are ruined over money.
It does happen, yeah, we get calls like that all the time on the Ramsey show, and as much as I hate to say it, a lot of times at the root of those conversations, when there is, like you said, kind of that dissension and that separation that takes place, is there's usually one of a couple of things going on. Number one, the person who passed away, whether it was a parent or an uncle or whatever, didn't do their due diligence in letting folks know about the will and letting them know what their wishes were ahead of time. And so then that person passes and the kids or the beneficiaries are forced to kind of scramble and try to figure that out. So that's thing 1. And then thing 2, there's a lot of times there is a bit of accountability or a bit of entitlement there. That's kind of like, I thought I would get this. I think I should have this. I think I should be able to make right. And so that's when those two things are part of the equation, it does get really tough, Tara.
Yeah. How do you, because one of the things that I catch your clips, I watch your show, and some of these calls come in, and I'm just like, oh my God, how are they going to answer that without completely offending the person? Because the whole show is difficult conversations.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it is. I think that's when authenticity comes into play because at the end of the day, when somebody calls in, I in my mind, I place myself in their situation. I go, "Okay, if Jade lifted herself up and was suddenly in their situation, what would I do?" Because I'm not going to tell somebody to do something I wouldn't do or that I haven't done or do you see what I'm saying? And so for me, that kind of has to be the framework. Like critical thinking can't just be, what does the facts sheet say? Like what does Dave say? What does Google say?
Right,
What does,
right.
AI tell me? I can't answer questions like that. I have to go, if Jade Warshaw landed in your seat today, what would I do? And if I focus on that, then I don't get too hung up on am I offending them and am I going to hurt their feelings? Am I going to cuz I go I'm hurting my own feelings at this point, like I'm not telling you anything that if I were you I'd want to hear a hard truth as well. So that's kind of what gives me the right to say some of the things I say in
Yeah.
my mind.
Well, you've earned the right, right? You and Dave have earned the right to give people, and they're calling in for advice. And let's
That's
face
true.
it, I mean, it's difficult conversations, but man, you guys do get some doozies
We
on
do.
there. Before we go, and I have one final question. Tell us about your book. Tell us about your experience with Dave, because you've been with Ramsey now for 2 years. Tell people how to follow you, all your stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I've been with Ramsey Solutions for since 2022, so going on 3 years here, and it's been great. Everybody here um really just been a really great experience. These are authentic people. The truth of the matter is like who you see on the show is really who they are in real life. Like Dave doesn't change, Rachel doesn't change, can't like nobody changes. And I think that's why the show does really well is because like you said, we show up who we are and we don't try to I don't know, be flashy or whatever for the camera. It's just, real conversations with real people. And I've really enjoyed that. Getting to write the book Money's Not a Math Problem. That was just a kind of a toe dip into some of the things that I have to say about money. It's a quick read, which is just what it sounds like. You can read it really quick. I think it's like 70 pages. And it's really just a quick guide for anybody who's looking for getting started with making change with their money. And usually that starts with, hey, get on a budget, right? People hear that all the time. Oh, I'm supposed to get on a budget. But like you said, depending on their background, it makes them feel some type of way. And I'm just helping them and guiding them through that conversation of here's some of the things you might have believed were true about a budget. Like, here's some of the lies that are out there that are probably circulating in your own heart and mind. And then I'm combating them with a couple of truths that are actually like, here's really what it's about. And so, if you are one of those folks that could use a little help, Money's Not a Math Problem. Like I said, you can read it
Where's the
in a
best place
couple
to get it?
hours.
Do you guys anywhere?
Yeah, you can find it on ramseysolutions.com, or you can find it on Amazon, anywhere that you might order a
Well, and
book.
how do they follow you? What is your Instagram handle? We'll put all this in the show
Yeah,
notes,
yeah.
but
It's at Jade Warshaw on all the accounts, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you wanna really talk to me, I'm on Instagram. Like, that's me commenting.
you are.
That's
And
actually me.
cooking and walking and running. It is so true. You're just so genuinely real and authentic and just vulnerable and transparent about your story. And I love your recipes. You're such a great mom.
Thank you.
You moved to Nashville and you're just living the dream. And even like you were doing like you were out running and doing stories for the longest time. And I just appreciate that. And you're right. Like what we see on Instagram is what we see on the show.
It is. I try to be, like I said before, you can't compartmentalize yourself and dice yourself up in all those ways. If you do that, it's like, how do you keep track of all of the people you're trying, all the versions of yourself you're trying to be? Just be genuine, be true to yourself, and really, in the words of you, be who you came to be.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think once we give ourselves permission just to honor that
Yeah.
and be like, this is who I am.
No apologies.
And yes, I know my audience that is, I show up a little different at work than I do here because of the audience and where I'm at. But ultimately, like at the heart of
Yeah.
who I am is like, this is what you see is what you
What you
get.
see is what you
So I
get.
have is there anything else that you want to add before I have one last question for you?
Oh, I don't think so. I feel like we've gone through a little gamut here. So,
Okay, so this is a little bit of a tricky one, but I really love your story. And what do you hope people feel when they hear your story, and how does that tie back to their own potential, who they came to be?
yeah, I hope that when they hear my story, they look at me and go, she's like me. Like, I say this all the time, and it's never to be self deprecating. It's just the realest truth. Sometimes we look at folks who seem to be in a situation, or they seem to have a platform, or they seem to have something that we don't, right? And we go, oh, there's something special about them, or there's something, they got an aura or something. And the truth is, that's not true at all. The truth is, I grew up in a small town, and I had a mediocre education, and I made a lot of mistakes with debt, and my parents didn't have a bunch of money, and there was nothing that I can identify that makes me go, here's what makes me different from you. Really? It doesn't exist. And so I hope that people hear my story and go, well, shoot, if she can do that, I can do that. Right? It's not well, those people or the people over there. It's no, I want you to know I looked up one day and thought, "Oh, crap," I'm, headed off a cliff here, and with the right steps and with the right movements, you can change your life, completely change it. And and if you're going through something really tough right now, like if you're going through something that you don't know if you're gonna see the other side of, what I have learned from my life is it's rare that experience, what you'll come away with, because you will come away with something, it will not be a wasted experience. I believe what you'll find is that it was never just intended for you. I think that when we go through really tough seasons, like for me going through almost $500,000 of debt, an 8-year process of just taking me and my husband through the ringer, in the moment, I thought that was just about us. I thought it was just a mistake we made and something we were gonna have to see ourselves out of. And now on the other side, I go, "Holy crap." Like, how how short-sighted of me to think that it was just for me. And so I wanna encourage somebody that whatever you're going through, other lives will be affected by what you do next, not just you. And stick around for that because it's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah. You did a reel on that when you were writing your book about how it was like this moment of like, I can't even believe that I went from all that debt and the stress of it. And now here I am writing this book. And
Mhm.
like, and I do believe that so much of our purpose is what we help other people do.
Yeah.
And that's really where if we focus our energy and time is where we can ultimately be who we came to be.
Absolutely. I mean, our hope is that's where a lot of our hope lies is we need to be able to look to the side and see what somebody else did, right? And it's not this like negative comparison or something. It's just sometimes you need to see, is this possible, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to look to the side and go, oh, he did it, or oh, she's doing, or "Oh, okay, look at her. That helps, especially when that person is doing it, like you said, as their most authentic self. They're not trying to create this facade, right? We have to show up authentically because that's where people find the most hope.
Yeah, and it's where we relate to people and really have those moments of change.
Yeah.
So, Jade, thank you so much for being on the Be Who You Came to Be podcast today. You have changed so many lives, and even just having this conversation today with me, I could ask you a million questions, but we can just tune in and listen in and get all of your insight and wisdom and love by watching the Dave Ramsey show. Is there a certain day that you are on?
No, it changes all the time, but we're filming Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 Central Time, and so it's 3-hour show. You can catch it, or if you wanna watch it on your own time, you can check out the Ramsey Network app. You can find that, in the App Store or in the Google Play Store.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Keep shining, live unapologetically authentic, and be who you came to be. Hey there. If you're loving the Be Who You Came to Be podcast and thinking, oh my gosh, my brand would totally vibe with this podcast, well, then guess what? It probably would. And I've got some great news. We have officially opened up our doors and are adding new sponsors to the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. That means your brand could be riding shotgun with me every Friday. Well, what does it include? Think shout outs, reels, emails. It is the works. If you've got a mission that aligns with living authentically, living boldly to your truths, and being who you came to be, slide in to my DMs as I would love to learn more about your brand and how we could partner on the Be Who You Came to Be podcast. Until then, keep shining.